est the lost city of Z. In 1925, British explorer Colonel Percy Fawcett, along with his son Jack and Jack's friend Raleigh, ventured into the Brazilian Amazon, searching for an ancient lost city he called Zede. Fawcett believed this city was the remnants of a sophisticated ancient civilization. On May 29, 1925, Fawcett sent a final message stating, "The city is close. I can feel it. The Indians speak of ruins to the east. We head there tomorrow." That was the last anyone heard from the expedition. None of the three men were ever seen again. Percy Fawcett was a respected surveyor and cartographer who had spent years mapping the Amazon for the Royal Geographical Society. During his expeditions, he'd heard consistent stories from indigenous peoples about ancient cities deep in the jungle, stone structures, and evidence of a lost civilization. His obsession was fueled by discovering manuscript 5 and 12, written by a Portuguese explorer in 1753, which described finding enormous stone ruins in the interior. In 1925, Fawcett organized his final expedition. He was 57 years old and determined to prove his theory. Unlike previous expeditions, he deliberately kept the location vague and took minimal supplies, believing a small party could move faster. The expedition departed from Cuiabá in April 1925. For the first month, Fawcett sent regular dispatches to his wife. The messages were optimistic. They were making good progress and gathering information about ruins. On May 29th, they reached the territory of the Kalapalo tribe. Fawcett sent his final message. "The city is close. I can feel it. The Indians speak of ruins to the east. We head there tomorrow." Then silence. Over the following decades, at least 13 rescue expeditions searched for Fawcett. More than 100 people died trying to find him. None found definitive evidence of what happened. The Kalapalo tribe told researchers that Fawcett's party had left their village heading east. After that, nothing. Various tribes gave conflicting accounts. In 1951, a tribe presented bones they claimed were Fawcett's, but forensic testing proved they weren't. The most tantalizing evidence came from aerial surveys and satellite imagery revealing geometrical earthworks and what appear to be foundations of large structures in the precise region where Fawcett was heading. Modern archaeology has confirmed that sophisticated pre-Columbian civilizations did exist in the Amazon. Fawcett may have been right. His final message suggested he was close. The fact that he disappeared so completely suggests something happened quickly after his final dispatch. The Desert Wanderer. In November 1934, 20-year-old artist Everett Ruiz disappeared in the canyon lands of southern Utah. Ruiz spent years exploring the American Southwest, painting and writing about the desert. Before he vanished, he sent a letter to his brother stating, "I have been discovering so much. The ancients here left more than ruins. They left messages. I'm following the symbols to something remarkable." He signed the letter Nemo, Latin for nobody. Ruiz, his 2 burros, and all his equipment vanished without a trace. Everett Ruiz was a sophisticated young man from Los Angeles, educated and talented. But he was drawn obsessively to the desert wilderness, disappearing for months at a time, living alone in remote canyons. In 1934, Ruiz embarked on his final journey into the canyon lands around Escalante, Utah, some of the most remote territory in America. He traveled with 2 burros carrying his supplies and painting materials. In early November, he stopped at a ranch near Escalante, excited about ancient cliff dwellings he'd been exploring. His final letter to his brother was unusual. Ruiz wrote about discovering something significant in the ancient ruins, messages left by the ancestral Puebloans. He wrote cryptically about following the symbols and suggested he was on the verge of a remarkable discovery. Most strangely, he signed Nemo instead of his name, suggesting he was about to become nobody. Weeks later, search parties found Ruiz's camp in Davis Gulch. His 2 burros were in a makeshift corral, still alive but abandoned. His camping equipment was neatly arranged, but Ruiz himself, his journals, and his painting supplies were gone. The word Nemo was carved into the rock at the campsite. The scene was bizarre. Ruiz had carefully set up camp, corralled his burros, and then walked away with only his pack and journals. Extensive searches found no body, no additional camps, no trace beyond that campsite. In 2009, a burial site was excavated with bones thought to be Roos's. DNA testing proved they weren't his. Everett Roos walked into the desert canyons, claimed to have found something remarkable, carved Nemo into the rock, and was never seen again. The Jungle Collector. In November 1961, Michael Rockefeller, 23-year-old son of New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller, disappeared off the coast of New Guinea while collecting art from the Asmat people. Days before his disappearance, Rockefeller wrote in his journal, "I've gained their trust. Tomorrow they're taking me to see the sacred house, the place where they keep the objects no outsider has ever seen. This will be the find of a lifetime." His boat capsized on November 19th. His companion was rescued, but Rockefeller attempted to swim to shore and was never seen again. Michael Rockefeller was fascinated by primitive cultures. He joined a Dutch anthropological expedition to New Guinea to study the Asmat people. He became obsessed with their art and sacred objects. The Asmat lived in one of the world's most remote regions, dense jungle, swamps, and crocodile-infested rivers. Rockefeller spent months gaining the Asmat's trust. His final journal entries, dated November 17, 18, showed he was making a major breakthrough. The tribal elders had agreed to show him the sacred house, a hidden structure where the most powerful spiritual objects were kept, never shown to outsiders. He wrote, "This will be the find of a lifetime. If I can document these pieces, it will revolutionize understanding of Asmat spiritual practice." But on November 19th, his boat capsized. Rockefeller decided to swim for shore with 2 empty fuel cans for flotation. His companion was rescued the next day. Rockefeller was never found. The official conclusion was that he drowned or was taken by sharks, but rumors immediately circulated that he'd made it to shore and been killed by the Asmat tribe. In 2014, journalist Carl Hoffman published evidence that Rockefeller had indeed reached shore and been killed by Asmat tribesmen. But Hoffman's sources said something strange. They claimed Rockefeller had valuable items when he reached shore, items he shouldn't have had if he'd just swum from a capsized boat. This suggested Rockefeller might have visited the village before the official boat capsizing, accessed the sacred house, and taken sacred objects. Was the boat capsizing actually an accident, or was it cover for what really happened? His journal stated he was going to see the sacred house on November 19th, the same day as the boat incident. He was about to see something no outsider has ever seen, and then he disappeared forever. The Grand Canyon Rafters. In November 1928, newlyweds Glenn and Bessie Hyde attempted to raft through the Grand Canyon. On November 18th, they stopped at Hermit Creek and spoke with travelers. Glenn told them, "We found something remarkable back in one of the side canyons, a place that shouldn't exist. We're documenting everything." That was the last confirmed sighting. Their raft was found floating empty on December 1st, perfectly intact with all supplies aboard. Glenn and Bessie had vanished. Glenn and Bessie Hyde were young adventurers seeking fame by rafting through the Grand Canyon. They documented their journey with photographs and a detailed journal. At Hermit Creek, they encountered a group of travelers and showed off their photographs and journal. According to witnesses, Glenn mentioned they'd made an interesting discovery. While exploring a side canyon, they'd found a place that shouldn't exist, a hidden chamber or structure, clearly man-made, in a location where no human habitation should be. Bessie added that they'd taken photographs and were documenting it. They planned to announce the discovery after completing their journey. The group tried to convince them to hike out. Winter was approaching. Glenn refused, saying they were close to finishing and had important documentation to share. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. On December 1st, their raft was found floating in calm water. It was perfectly intact. All their supplies were aboard, but Glenn and Bessie were gone, and their journal and camera, which they'd shown to people at Hermit Creek, were also missing. The raft was found in calm water, not near any rapids. If there had been an accident, why was everything intact? Most puzzling was the missing journal and camera. If they'd simply fallen overboard, those items should have been on the raft. The Grand Canyon has long been the subject of legends about hidden caves and underground chambers. Glenn and Bessie Hyde claimed to have found something remarkable. Days later, they disappeared, and their documentation vanished with them. The Cloud Forest Archaeologist. In 1953, Peruvian archaeologist Professor Artemio Guillén led an expedition into the cloud forests of northern Peru, searching for ruins of the Chachapoya culture. On September 12th, Guillén radioed, "We've found it, the lost city, and something else, a sealed entrance in the cliff face. We're going to investigate tomorrow." The next day, his transmission cut off mid-sentence. "We've opened the entrance. Inside, there's static." When a rescue expedition reached his location 2 weeks later, they found the camp abandoned. No sign of Guillén or his 3 team members was ever found. Professor Guillén specialized in the mysterious Chachapoya, people who had lived in the cloud forests, high-altitude jungle regions where clouds constantly shroud the mountains. The Chachapoya built impressive stone cities in incredibly remote locations. Local legends spoke of other cities still hidden. Guillén's expedition departed in late August 1953. For 2 weeks, he sent regular radio reports. On September 12th, he sent an excited transmission. They'd found extensive ruins, but more interesting was a sealed entrance in the cliff face, an opening that appeared to lead into the mountain, too geometric to be natural. On September 13th, Guillén made his final transmission at approximately 11 a.m. The radio operator transcribed, "We've opened the entrance. It was sealed with stones. Inside there's..." Then static. The radio died. When rescuers reached the coordinates 2 weeks later, they found the camp abandoned. Equipment was scattered. Supplies remained. The rescuers found what appeared to be the sealed entrance, an opening in the cliff leading into darkness. Stones had been removed, confirming Guillén's team had opened it. The passage led about 50 meters into the mountain before ending in a collapsed section. The rescue team couldn't excavate safely. They found no sign of the missing men. The official conclusion was that they had been trapped by a collapse, but questions remained. If there had been a collapse, why was the entrance area undisturbed? Why was the camp abandoned? The university attempted to organize proper excavation, but the Peruvian government denied permission. The cave entrance was sealed, and the region was declared off-limits. Guillén's final words were, "Inside there's..." And then silence. What did he see before the transmission cut off? The Iceland Cave. In June 1999, cave explorer Sarah Johansen, a 32-year-old geologist from Norway, was exploring lava tube caves in Iceland's interior. Johansen was an experienced spelunker with years of cave exploration experience. On June 23rd, she called her base camp via satellite phone. "I've found a passage the survey maps don't show. It goes much deeper than the lava tubes should. The rock is different here. There are markings on the walls, symbols that look carved. I'm following it. This could be significant." She agreed to check in every 4 hours. She never called again. A rescue team entered the cave system, but found no trace of Johansen beyond a 300 meters underground, where her rope was found cut, not frayed or broken, but cut cleanly. Sarah Johansen was a respected geologist specializing in volcanic formations. She had explored caves across Europe and was known for her meticulous documentation and safety practices. In 1999, she was part of a scientific team mapping Iceland's lava tube systems. Caves formed when the surface of a lava flow cools, while molten lava continues flowing underneath, eventually draining and leaving hollow tubes. Johansen was working alone, which was her preference, but she maintained strict safety protocols, regular check-ins, detailed route documentation, and proper equipment. On June 23rd, she was exploring a known lava tube system in Iceland's interior highlands, a remote and desolate area. Her mid-afternoon satellite phone call to base camp was routine at first, reporting her progress and location. Then her tone changed. She'd found something unexpected, a passage branching off from the main lava tube that wasn't on any survey maps. She described the passage as going much deeper than the lava tubes should, meaning it extended well below the depth that volcanic processes would create. More intriguing, she described the rock being different, not volcanic basalt like the lava tubes, but older rock, and there were markings on the walls, symbols that appeared carved rather than natural. She said they looked deliberately placed and very old. Johansen stated she was going to follow the passage to see where it led. This wasn't reckless. She was properly equipped, had rope and lights, and the passage was stable. She agreed to call back in 4 hours with an update. The base camp supervisor made her promise not to go too deep without backup. Johansson agreed. 4 hours passed. No call. 8 hours, 12 hours. By the next morning, base camp was deeply concerned. They contacted rescue services, and a team entered the cave system following Johansson's documented route. The rescue team found the known lava tube exactly as mapped. About 200 meters in, they found where Johansson had marked the unmapped passage with reflective tape, her standard practice. The passage was narrow but navigable, descending at a steep angle into older rock strata, just as she'd described. The team followed the passage. About 300 meters down, they found Johansson's rope. It was still anchored to the rock where she'd secured it, but the end of the rope had been cut. Not frayed from wear, not broken from strain, but cut cleanly as if with a knife. Beyond that point, there was no trace of Sarah Johansson, no equipment, no footprints in the dust, nothing. The passage continued descending, but the rescue team couldn't determine how far. After several hundred more meters, they reached areas where the cave became unstable, with risk of collapse. They couldn't safely proceed further. The cut rope was inexplicable. Why would Johansson cut her own safety rope? It made no sense. If she'd wanted to detach the rope to take it with her, she would have unclipped it from her harness. Cutting it would leave her without that length of rope for further descent. Moreover, Johansson was experienced and safety conscious. She wouldn't do something so reckless. Could someone else have cut it? But who? She was alone in a remote cave system. The only other people for miles were her own base camp team, and they were accounted for. The Icelandic search and rescue teams made several attempts to explore further into the passage, but the cave became increasingly dangerous. Narrow passages, unstable rock, and the real risk of getting trapped. After 2 weeks, the search was called off. Sarah Johansson was declared dead, presumed to have fallen in an unmapped cave section, but the cut rope haunted investigators. In 2003, a caver named Erik Thorsen claimed to have explored the same cave system. He said he'd followed a passage matching Johansson's description and found markings on the walls, geometric symbols carved into rock. He photographed some, but his camera was damaged before he could document all of them. Thorsen stated the symbols looked very old, pre-Viking, maybe Bronze Age or older. Thorsen also claimed the passage led to a larger chamber, but he couldn't safely reach it alone. He tried to organize an expedition to return, but Icelandic authorities denied permits, stating the cave was too dangerous and unstable. Did Sarah Johansson find an ancient carved passage in the Icelandic interior? Did she descend into an underground chamber and become trapped or lost? Or did she find something that made her cut her rope and continue despite the danger? Her final words were that the discovery could be significant. Whatever she found was significant enough that she never emerged to tell anyone about it. The Lost Colony Team. In October 2004, a team of 4 researchers, 2 historians, an archaeologist, and a documentary filmmaker traveled to Roanoke Island, North Carolina, to investigate the famous Lost Colony that vanished in the 1580s. Team leader Dr. Marcus Webb claimed they had found new evidence about what happened to the colonists. On October 19th, Webb left a voicemail for a colleague. "We found it. We found where they went. There's a marked tree, symbols matching John White's description, leading to a site inland. We're heading there tomorrow. This solves the mystery." The team's rental car was found 4 days later at a trailhead, with all their equipment inside except their cameras and research notes. The 4 researchers have never been found. The Roanoke colony is one of American history's great mysteries. In 1587, a group of English colonists established a settlement on Roanoke Island. Their governor, John White, returned to England for supplies. When he came back in 1590, the colony was deserted. The colonists had vanished. The only clue was the word Croatoan carved into a post, and CRO carved into a tree. For over 400 years, historians have debated what happened. Theories range from the colonists joining local Native American tribes, to being killed by Spanish raiders, to dying from disease. Despite extensive archaeological research, no definitive answer has been found. In 2004, Dr. Marcus Webb, a historian from the University of North Carolina, became convinced he'd found new evidence. Webb had been researching colonial documents and Native American oral traditions. He claimed to have identified clues that previous researchers had missed. specifically references to symbols and marked trees that might indicate the colonists' route when they left Roanoke. Webb assembled a small team, another historian, an archaeologist, and a documentary filmmaker to record their investigation. In October 2004, they traveled to Roanoke Island to search for these marked trees and symbols. The team spent several days investigating locations on the island and nearby mainland. On October 19th, Webb left a voicemail for a colleague at the university. The message was excited, almost breathless. "We found it. We found where they went. There's a marked tree, symbols matching John White's description, leading to a site inland. We're heading there tomorrow to investigate. This solves the mystery. I'll call you tomorrow night with details." Webb never called. When the colleague couldn't reach Webb or other team members for several days, he contacted authorities. Police found the team's rental car on October 23rd at a trailhead near the Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge, about 20 miles from Roanoke Island. The car was unlocked. All the team's equipment was inside: camping gear, supplies, extra clothing, laptop computers. Missing were the team's cameras, research notes, and Webb's field journal, where he documented their findings. Also missing were the 4 team members. Search and rescue teams combed the area. The refuge is vast, over 150,000 acres of wetlands, forest, and swamps. It's easy to get lost, and the terrain is dangerous. Despite extensive searching, no trace of the 4 researchers was found. No camps, no equipment, no bodies, nothing. The investigation revealed that Webb had withdrawn a significant amount of cash before the trip and hadn't told anyone at the university the specific location of the site they were investigating. His colleague knew only that they were following leads near Roanoke. Webb's research notes at his university office were cryptic, references to marked trees and symbols and coordinates, but nothing definitive. What happened to Webb's team? If they got lost in the refuge and died from exposure or accident, why hasn't even one body been found in 20 years? Why did Webb withdraw cash and keep the location secret? Most mysterious is the missing cameras and research notes. If the team simply walked into the wilderness and died, their equipment should have been found with their bodies. Some researchers have suggested Webb's team found something related to the lost colony, perhaps archaeological evidence, or a location described in legends. And whatever happened to the Roanoke colonists also happened to Webb's team. It's an eerie parallel. In 1587, over 100 colonists vanished without a trace. In 2004, 4 researchers investigating that disappearance also vanished without a trace. The Siberian geologist. In 1989, Soviet geologist Anatoly Moskvin was part of a team conducting mineral surveys in remote Siberia. On August 3, 1989, Moskvin radioed that his equipment had detected unusual readings in a remote valley, metallic anomalies that didn't match any known geological formations. He stated, "I'm investigating alone. The readings are strongest near what looks like an entrance, artificial, very old, partially buried. I'm going to document it." 6 hours later, he made a brief, garbled transmission. "Don't send anyone. Tell them." The transmission ended abruptly. A rescue team found his camp 3 days later. His equipment was there. His journal lay open to a page showing sketches of strange geometric symbols. Moskvin was never found. Anatoly Moskvin was an experienced geologist who had worked in Siberia's remote regions for over a decade. He was part of a larger survey expedition mapping mineral deposits in the far eastern Siberian territory, one of Earth's most isolated regions. The survey team worked in small groups, usually 2 or 3 geologists with radio communication to base camp. On August 3, 1989, Moskvin was working with a partner who had returned to base camp due to illness. Moskvin continued the survey alone, which wasn't unusual. He was experienced and well-equipped. His afternoon radio check-in was routine until he mentioned something unexpected. His magnetometer and ground-penetrating equipment were showing anomalous readings in a remote valley. The readings suggested metallic deposits or structures, but they didn't match the patterns of natural mineral formations. Moskvin reported he was going to investigate. He described seeing what looked like an entrance, artificial, very old, partially buried by rockfall and soil. He said he was going to document it and would report back in a few hours. 6 hours later, Moskvin made another transmission. The radio operator at base camp described it as garbled and panicked. The transmission was poor quality, breaking up, but the operator transcribed what he could hear. Don't send anyone. Tell them, then static, then silence. Repeated attempts to re-establish contact failed. Given the remote location and difficult terrain, it took 3 days for a rescue team to reach Moskvin's last known coordinates. They found his camp set up normally. His tent, supplies, and equipment were all present. His geological instruments were there, still showing the anomalous readings he'd reported. Most significantly, they found his journal. It was lying open in the tent. The last entry, dated August 3rd, contained sketches. Moskvin had drawn geometric symbols, shapes that appeared to be carved or inscribed on rock. The symbols were complex, precise, and unlike any known writing system. Below the sketches, Moskvin had written, "Entrance confirmed." Symbols on the wall, not geological, not natural, going in. The rescue team searched the area extensively. About half a kilometer from camp, they found disturbed rock and soil that might have been the entrance Moskvin described. But there was no actual entrance visible, just a rock face with some collapsed debris. If there had been an opening, it was now sealed by rockfall or had never been accessible. No trace of Moskvin was found. No tracks, no equipment trail, no body, nothing. The Soviet authorities conducted an extensive search, but eventually concluded Moskvin had likely fallen into a crevasse or been buried in a rockfall. His death was officially attributed to an accident, but questions remained. Why had Moskvin's final transmission warned them not to send anyone? What did he want to tell them? Most mysterious were the symbols in his journal. What had he seen and where? In the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapsed, some former team members came forward with additional information. Several stated that the area where Moskvin disappeared had local legends about it. The indigenous Evenki people called it the place of the old doors, and said their ancestors had sealed entrances there because bad spirits lived underground. One former colleague claimed that Soviet authorities had recovered Moskvin's field equipment during the search, including a camera, but the film was never developed or was lost in official channels. This colleague suggested the authorities had found something they didn't want publicized. Did Anatoly Moskvin find an ancient artificial structure in remote Siberia? Did he enter it and become trapped? Or did he find something that made him warn others not to follow? His journal sketches of symbols suggest he documented something real before he disappeared forever. The Highland Sacred Site. In 1972, Australian anthropologist Dr. Emily Brennan led a small expedition into the unexplored highlands of Papua New Guinea. The team was documenting tribes that had never had contact with the outside world. On July 12, 1972, Brennan's final radio message reported, "We've been accepted by the Highland people. They're taking us tomorrow to a sacred site they call the Stone Place where the Old Ones sleep. They say no outsider has ever been allowed there. We'll document everything." The next day, Papua New Guinea authorities received a brief, frantic radio call, screaming sounds of chaos, then one clear sentence, "They're awake," then silence. A rescue expedition found the team's base camp abandoned. No trace of Dr. Brennan or her 4 team members has ever been found. Dr. Emily Brennan was a respected anthropologist from the Australian National University. She specialized in studying first contact situations with uncontacted tribes in Papua New Guinea's interior highlands, one of the last places on Earth with people who had never seen the outside world. In 1972, Brennan organized an expedition into a particularly remote highland region that aerial surveys suggested was inhabited, but had never been visited by outsiders. Her team consisted of herself, 2 other anthropologists, a medical officer, and an indigenous guide from a neighboring region. The expedition made first contact successfully. Brennan's radio reports described a highland tribe of approximately 300 people living in traditional ways. The anthropologists were carefully building trust, learning the language, and documenting the culture. On July 12th, Brennan sent an excited transmission. The tribal elders had agreed to show the expedition a sacred site, something they called the Stone Place where the Old Ones sleep. According to Brennan, this was an enormous honor. The tribe had never shown this place to anyone outside their group. not even neighboring tribes. Brennan described what the elders told her. The site was a place of stone structures built by the Old Ones, ancestors or ancient people who had lived before the current tribe. The structures contained the sleeping places of these ancient ones. The tribe visited the site only for important ceremonies and treated it with great reverence and fear. Brennan stated the team would visit the site the next day, document it, and report back. She was clearly excited about the anthropological significance. A sacred site preserved by an isolated tribe could provide remarkable insights into the region's ancient history. The next day, July 13th, Papua New Guinea's radio monitoring station received a brief transmission on the expedition's frequency. The radio operator described it as chaos, screaming, sounds of people running, possibly gunfire or explosions, though this wasn't clear. The transmission lasted approximately 20 seconds. Near the end, one voice came through clearly. The operator believed it was Dr. Brennan, saying one sentence, "They're awake." Then the transmission cut off. Repeated attempts to re-establish contact failed. The Papua New Guinea government immediately organized a rescue operation. However, reaching the expedition's location required helicopter transport and took 2 days due to weather. When rescuers arrived at the expedition's base camp, they found it abandoned. Tents were standing but empty. Equipment and supplies remained. The camp appeared to have been left in a hurry. Food was out, as if the team had been eating when they left. Medical supplies were scattered, and personal items were left behind. The tribal village was also abandoned. The entire tribe, 300 people, was gone. Their homes were empty. Cooking fires were cold. It appeared the tribe had left everything and departed hastily. Extensive searches of the surrounding area found no trace of either the expedition team or the tribal people. No bodies, no camps, no trails indicating where they had gone. The highland region is vast and difficult to search, covered in dense jungle, mountains, and caves. But the complete disappearance of 300-plus people in addition to the 5-person expedition was unprecedented. The Papua New Guinea government investigated but reached no conclusion. The official report stated the expedition and the tribe had likely been killed in a landslide or natural disaster, and the bodies were buried, but no evidence of such a disaster was found. What was the stone place where the old ones sleep? What did Brennan's final words, "They're awake," mean? Some researchers have speculated the site might have been an ancient burial ground or tomb, and disturbing it might have triggered some kind of disaster, perhaps a cave collapse, or the release of trapped gases, or a disease from preserved remains. Others point to the fact that an entire tribe also disappeared. This wasn't just 5 expedition members. It was 300 indigenous people who knew the terrain and had lived there for generations. What could make an entire tribe flee and disappear without a trace? Dr. Emily Brennan and her team went to document a sacred site that no outsider had ever been allowed to see. Something happened at that site that made her radio one final message before disappearing forever. The Antarctic Anomaly. In November 2002, glaciologist Dr. James Martinez was part of a research team studying ice formations in Antarctica's transantarctic mountains. On November 14th, Martinez sent an email to his colleague. "Found something impossible. There's a structure under the ice. Artificial, geometric, definitely not natural. I'm taking samples tomorrow. If this is what I think it is, it changes everything." Martinez was scheduled for helicopter pickup on November 16th. When the helicopter arrived, his camp was empty. His equipment was there, including his laptop with the email still on the screen. But Martinez, his ice samples, his camera, and all his research notes were gone. A search found nothing. The area where he'd been working showed evidence of recent ice drilling, but the drill site had been carefully refilled and smoothed over, as if someone had tried to hide what had been excavated. Dr. James Martinez was a respected glaciologist from the University of Colorado. In November 2002, he was part of a multinational research project studying ice formations and climate history in Antarctica's transantarctic mountains. Martinez was working alone at a remote site, which was standard practice. Researchers would helicopter to specific locations, conduct their work for a few days, then be picked up. They had satellite communication equipment for emergencies. On November 14th, Martinez sent an email to a colleague using the satellite internet connection. The email was brief and cryptic. Found something impossible. There's a structure under the ice. Artificial, geometric, definitely not natural. I'm taking samples tomorrow. If this is what I think it is, it changes everything. I'll explain when I'm back. Don't mention this to anyone yet. The colleague was intrigued but not alarmed. Martinez was scheduled for pickup on November 16th, just 2 days away. He'd explain then. On November 16th, the helicopter arrived at Martinez's camp for the scheduled pickup. The pilot found the camp set up normally. Martinez's tent was standing, his equipment arranged properly, supplies intact, but Martinez himself was not there. The pilot searched the immediate area and tried radio communication. No response. Growing concerned, the pilot entered Martinez's tent. Everything appeared normal: sleeping bag, personal items, research equipment. Martinez's laptop was open, still displaying the email he'd sent 2 days earlier. But Martinez was gone. Also missing were Martinez's camera, his field notebook, where he documented daily research, and any ice samples he'd collected. His sample storage containers were empty. If he'd collected samples, he'd taken them with him. The pilot immediately called for emergency assistance. A search and rescue operation was launched. Teams searched the area extensively. Antarctica is dangerous. Crevasses, sudden weather changes, and extreme cold make it easy for even experienced researchers to die from accidents. But typically, bodies or equipment are found. In Martinez's case, nothing was found. No body, no additional camps, no equipment trail, nothing. However, searchers did find something strange. About half a kilometer from Martinez's camp, there was evidence of recent ice drilling. The ice showed bore holes, drilling debris, and disturbance consistent with someone using portable drilling equipment to extract ice cores. What was strange was that the drilling site had been carefully refilled. Someone had taken the extracted ice cores, then filled the holes with packed snow and ice and smoothed over the surface. This wasn't normal research practice. Scientists typically left drilling sites as they were, or marked them clearly for future reference. Why would someone drill into the ice, extract cores, and then carefully conceal the drilling site? It suggested Martinez had been trying to hide what he was investigating. The investigation reviewed satellite imagery of the area. Analysis showed that the specific location where Martinez had drilled was over a region where ground-penetrating radar had detected anomalous reflections, signals that suggested something other than ice and rock beneath the surface. These anomalies had been noted in previous surveys, but never investigated in detail. Martinez's colleague, when interviewed, stated that Martinez had been interested in these anomalies. In earlier conversations, Martinez had speculated that some of the radar reflections might indicate geological features, possibly volcanic formations under the ice. But his final email suggested he'd found something different, something artificial. No further investigation of the site was conducted. The area was in a remote, difficult-to-access location, and authorities stated that without clearer evidence, they couldn't justify the expense and danger of an extensive operation. In 2010, a researcher who had worked on the same Antarctic project published an article questioning what had happened to Martinez. He noted that satellite imagery of the area showed the drilling site Martinez had carefully refilled, but images from a few weeks after Martinez's disappearance showed the site had been drilled again. New boreholes, more extensive excavation, then refilled once more. Someone had returned to the exact location where Martinez had been working, conducted more drilling, and concealed it. This wasn't part of any official research program. Who had returned to that site, and what were they looking for? Dr. James Martinez found something under the Antarctic ice that he described as artificial, geometric, definitely not natural. He drilled samples to investigate. Then he disappeared, along with all evidence of what he'd found. Whatever structure or anomaly lies beneath the ice at that location remains hidden, and the man who found it was never seen again. These 10 explorers vanished after making discoveries. In each case, the explorers' final communication described finding something significant: an ancient city, a sealed chamber, a hidden structure, a sacred site, an impossible anomaly. Then they disappeared, and often the evidence disappeared with them. Missing journals, cameras, research notes, and samples. In multiple cases, the explorer disappeared along with the only records of what they found. If these were simple accidents, the documentation should have been found with the bodies or left at camps. Instead, the evidence disappeared along with the people. Some vanished in remote jungles where bodies might never be found. Others disappeared in deserts, mountains, caves, and frozen wastelands where natural dangers are everywhere. The official explanations are usually accidents, but the pattern is disturbing. These weren't just explorers who died on expeditions. These were people who reported finding something important, something that would change everything, or solve the mystery, or be the find of a lifetime. Then, within hours or days, they vanished. Were these tragic accidents, experienced explorers making fatal mistakes? Or did these explorers find things that certain forces didn't want found? The most disturbing possibility is the pattern itself. Explorers throughout history have died on expeditions, but these specific cases share the common element. The explorer reported finding something remarkable, and then immediately disappeared. How many discoveries have been lost because the only person who found them never made it back? How many ruins, structures, artifacts, and secrets remain hidden because the explorers who found them disappeared before they could share what they learned? These 10 explorers found something remarkable, and they were never seen again.